The Chevy Blazer EV gets an SS version for the 2025 model year finally. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talk about the kind of efficiency you can expect and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition these days. So as far as the Blazer EV SS, well, it's the return of the SS badge after it went away on the Camaro a little while back, and happy to see SS return. Always happy to see a performance version of a vehicle. And for the Blazer though, obviously it's a radical redefinition of the SS badge. Obviously, you know, it's still very fast, but it's not the same kind of speed we're used to from the SS badge. But I think that it certainly has the extra aggression we're expecting from an SS badge, at least on the outside here. You know, you have that more aggressive front bumper here for the SS version that looks really cool. You have these 22-inch wheels, some of the biggest wheels as far as this segment goes, and really quite impressive and make a statement. And also, this car the Blazer always looks so sleek and so aggressive already, but especially with the SS one having like the black roof as standard, you really have, you know, an aggressive greenhouse area there with how aggressively it slants backward and the tiny little glass there for the C and D pillar area. It's really, you know, quite impressive and just really, I think, stands out very nicely, especially with the black roof. But you also get some unique side skirts here on the sides, and then out back there you're going to see a unique rear bumper as well. You also get some clear taillights as opposed to the red ones you get on regular Blazers. And overall, I think it's a really, you know, nicely amped up look for the SS version. And again, this thing, especially in red here, really does stand out. The interior of the Blazer EV SS is the same as a regular Blazer, and that is kind of a miss because most of the other competitors have a sportier interior for their sporty versions. This, you get an SS badge on the steering wheel and you get one embroidered in the headrest. That's it. Now, a fully loaded Blazer EV interior is a very nice place to be, so, you know, that's fine. It's just that, you know, these seats, for example, have like almost no bolstering. I mean, these seats could be in a pickup truck or something. I mean, they're just very flat, especially, I mean, look at the thigh bolster. I mean, even, again, there's regular ordinary cars with 130 horsepower that have more bolstering than this seat does. And, you know, I mean, it's a minor upcharge for the SS version. It's only like $5 grand more for all this extra performance over a regular Blazer. So, you know, I mean, at least the value is there, but, you know, it just would have been nice for them to upgrade the seats a little bit, or at least offer an option for upgraded seats and make people pay extra for that if they want it. But instead, there's no such option, no way to get sportier seats. So you're going to be hanging on tight whenever you're trying to drive spiritedly in the Blazer EV SS here. They're nice seats, though. They're comfortable. They're heated and ventilated and have all the usual adjustments. Aside from, again, I'd love even just adjustable bolstering on these regular seats would be great. We don't even have that. But moving on, you know, the steering wheel is appropriately thick. All Blazers have very thick steering wheels, and so that's something the SS thankfully inherits, so that it does feel sporty, with a nice chunky 9.3 grip here, and you know, a little bit of a flat bottom here, and, you know, pretty sporty wheel. I do love the red stitching as well, and I also have to commend Chevrolet for the boldness to offer red on red. Having a red interior in a red car is a lot of red. I personally actually really like it, but obviously there's a black interior option, I think, as well, if you don't want to have something this bright, but I personally love the color. And then otherwise, you have your same digital gauge cluster you have here from a regular Blazer, although it does seem like they've added a percentage for the battery gauge. Previously, it was just like a set of bars, and you kind of had to guess unless you got out of the vehicle, then it would show you the percentage. Now you get a percentage all the time. I'm assuming they recognize that it's important whenever you're doing performance driving to see your actual percentage, since your range estimates can be all over the place depending on, you know, how intense your driving is. And so having the actual percentage, I'm very thankful for. So I'm very happy they have included that here. So that's a really nice improvement. Now, moving over to the middle of the dashboard here, you know, you have this 17.7-inch touchscreen, and I lived with a Blazer already for a full week. I gave all of my grievances about this screen in that video, so I'm not going to rehash all that here. What I will just say is that it does not have any kind of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You do have the Google Play Store, you have Google Maps built in, you have Google Assistant, you have Amazon Alexa, you have all these different things here that you have to sign into, you know, the system here and have everything. You can download apps as long as they're in the Play Store and run them natively through the screen here. But if you're someone who's in the Apple ecosystem and you use Apple apps, you're completely out of luck here. You know, reading text messages is not well done here, you know, just so basically you're going back to 2015 as far as smartphone integration. If you're an iPhone user, you know, you can do Bluetooth audio streaming, you can do phone calls, that's about it. Obviously everything else is very impressive. You know, having Google Maps built in is great. They say, you know, it does better routing and all that. And you can download Waze, thankfully, for example. So if you like, you know, using something other than Google Maps, you have that option. Apple Maps users, though, are going to be out of luck, obviously. But, you know, the screen otherwise, though, is fine. You know, it does have this ever-present bar of climate controls at the bottom. It's nice and easy to use. And everything else is within easy reach. It's all customizable. I have no other complaints. If it had CarPlay, I'd be completely fine with everything else. But because of that, to me, I know, and a lot of other people, that's a big deal breaker. So just be warned, you don't have that. There are some aftermarket solutions and add-on screens and all these crazy lengths people went to try and add CarPlay to these, because so many people do actually want that, despite what Chevy says. And so anyway, I'll move on, but otherwise, you know, it works totally fine. Now, one new feature that this screen gets here in the SS that I think is rolling out to all Blazers here for 2025 is that you now have the ability to stream video on, I think, Amazon Prime and also on Max and maybe one or two others while the vehicle is parked. So when you're charging or just sitting around for whatever other reason, you can actually stream video on here now, which is a very cool feature to have. That's something I don't believe most of the others, you know, offer, and so very cool they've added that. The other little things here, just briefly, you have a lot of storage bins here in the Blazer EV. So you have a nice large bin in the front here with 2 USB-C jacks. You have your cup holders. You have a wireless charging mat. You have the center armrest, which unfortunately is actually pretty hard. There's, you know, some nice leather wrapping here on it, but there's not much padding beneath that. So not super comfortable, honestly, for resting your elbow. That is, you know, for this being a cruiser, not having a nice place for your elbow is a little unfortunate. But anyway, you open that up and you will see a very nice deep cubby in there with a regular power outlet as well as another USB-C jack. And then you also have pockets on the doors here. It's also, you see a Bose stereo down here as well, which definitely sounds really good. It's a really nice sounding stereo. I also have to commend Chevrolet for the padding down by your knees here, especially since this car has SuperCruise as standard. You're going to be doing a lot of probably adaptive cruise control kind of, you know, driving on the highway where you have your knee maybe resting up against this center tunnel, and it's really nice that that's padded. Now, moving on to the back seat here, again, for anyone unfamiliar with Blazer, it's a good amount of space in the back there. You have a good amount of legroom. I'm 5'9". You can see I got plenty of space back there. You know, they have their own USB-C jacks, their heated seats back there, their own air vents, fold down armrest, and the only one option there really is as far as interior niceties here on the Blazer EV SS is the panoramic moonroof, which is about $1,600. This one has that option. It's a really nice large one and very well done. So I think that's worth the extra money. You know, a really nicely sized back seat. Unfortunately, that comes at the expense of cargo space. And you open up the cargo space, and for a vehicle this large, you know, kind of classified as a mid-size SUV, you have less, I think, space back there than you would have in a lot of compact SUVs. I think, like, for example, this has less space than a CR-V in the back there. So, you know, just be warned, it's, you know, not going to be the most practical. Now, you can fold the seats down, but, you know, just not as much cargo space as it may appear to have, you know, judging by how large this thing is as far as the exterior dimensions. But still should be fine. You have that nice large bin underneath the floor there as well for some bonus space too. But let's turn it on and go for a drive. So it's actually been on this whole time. Every time you sit down in this vehicle with a key in your pocket, it usually turns on, or you put your foot on the brake and then it turns on. But it's, you know, basically always trying to guess when you want the car on and off. Now there's a manual button to actually turn it off here in the screen. So if it's confused about what you're wanting, you know, you can actually override it. And likewise, you can also have a timer, so you can have it permanently stay on even if you leave the vehicle. If, you know, for example, you have people in the back that need air conditioning, things like that. So it's really nice that, you know, it tries to guess, but it also gives you the ability to override that if you would like. But yeah, so of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and all that. So you just leave the key in your pocket, and it's, you know, cool. You have the black Chevy bow tie badge there, but it would be cool to see an SS badge, but just, you know, regular buttons there on the back. But yeah, you just hop in and start driving. All right, so setting off here in the Blazer EV SS. So the first things you notice about this, well, I think the first thing I noticed, like any other Blazer, is that you have very good visibility. So, you know, nice large windshield, good view out of the sides, pretty thin A-pillar, good view out of the back as long as you got the camera rearview mirror on. Without it on, I mean, you have a very slender little view out of the window, so you're going to want to use the camera instead. Thankfully, that does come standard here on the SS version. But the other thing, though, is this vehicle does feel really big from behind the wheel, partially because, again, and I complained about this in the regular Blazer, you have a dashboard dashboard that is large enough you could serve dinner on it. I mean, it is enormous. And so as a result, it just means that you feel like the car is very long and actually very wide, because that plastic goes all the way to the, you know, corner of the base of the A-pillar there, and, you know, is this flat panel basically. And so this does feel big. Honestly, it probably feels bigger than it actually is. But, you know, whenever you're maneuvering in tight spots and things like that, if you're someone who doesn't like feeling like you're in a large car, you probably aren't going to love this. And that is a stark difference from all the other competitors that are similarly sized that, you know, don't feel like you're, you know, driving some giant vehicle. But this does feel really big. One nice thing, though, is I can get my seating position nice and low here. And so it kind of adds that sporty vibe of this vehicle, and also provides you with lots of great headroom if you are on the taller side. Other things here, so they did retune the suspension here for the SS version. We still unfortunately don't have like magnetic ride control or any other cool tricks that, you know, GM has in other models. Here we just have passive monotube dampers. They are different than, I guess there was twin tube dampers in the regular Blazer, so this is a difference from that. And anyway, the bottom line is with the retune here for the SS, you have 30% stiffer springs and 60% stiffer anti-roll bars. And I'm happy to report, though, that this, to me at least, around here, the ride quality is about the same as what I remember from a regular Blazer with the large wheels and the RS version of that. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I thought maybe it'd be a little stiffer and less comfortable. And I do think that, you know, it's kind of obvious between the seats and, again, the fact they didn't do a ton of handling work here with this, that this is more on the cruiser side. And I think as a result, you know, I'm happy that they did do the suspension the way they did, because this is probably going to be the best cruiser and the most comfortable ride of the bunch. Although the Mach-E GT does give you the MagneRide dampers, but I think, to me, this is basically top of the class as far as ride quality and smoothness for something that's a performance-oriented vehicle, especially with 22-inch wheels like this. And it's also pretty quiet in here. And of course, being electric, you have a pretty responsive throttle, although even in normal mode, the throttle, it's responsive, but you have to have a lot of pedal travel, and so you have to be very intentional and deliberate with your throttle inputs there, and it just, you know, requires more input than I think most other vehicles do. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and put in the wide open watts mode, is what they call it, wow mode, which does unlock the full amount of horsepower, gives you the sound effects. And there's also a Z mode that I'll put it into in a minute. That kind of unleashes the stability control system and allows you to have some torque vectoring that goes on. So we'll try that once we're actually on a corner. But just for an acceleration here, we're going to just enable that. I guess I'll put it up into the sport mode as well, just so that it gets the idea that I do want to have, you know, a sporty drive here. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it accelerates. I'm just going to roll into it. I'll do a launch later, but here we go. Woo! Yeah, this thing is fast. Wow, that is, I felt the blood rush to the back of my head on that one. It is a lot of power here. So we have the dual motor setup, a larger dual motor setup than you get on a regular Blazer, of course. And it's a rear bias setup, with the rear motor being more powerful, which is really nice, because up until this brand new model year, that's one thing I complained about with the Mach-E, is that it had a stronger front motor, and it drove me crazy. But this, it's more of a rear bias thing. And the grand total with this wide open watts mode on is you're going to have 615 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque, and that gives you a 3.4 seconds 0 to 60 according to Chevrolet. And yeah, I believe it. It's very, very quick, and thankfully haul you down. You do have bigger brakes up front here. They're 15.3-inch rotors, 6-piston Brembo front calipers here. You just have the floating or the sliding rear caliper there in the rear, 13.7-inch rotor in the back there. Still a decent-sized rotor, because it is a, you know, big, heavy EV, but just know you only get punchier brakes up front there. But, you know, plenty of braking ability from my experience here so far. That is, of course, something else we will continue to test out. And in the sport mode, you can hear, you get some little engine noises, but it's pretty quiet and a lot more subtle than, you know, some of the other competitors that really, like the IONIQ 5N, which can really go crazy and give you all kinds of fun sounds to choose from. This, it's just like, do you want normal, you know, very quiet sounds? Do you want the sport sounds, which are a little louder, or do you want to have no sounds at all? And those are your only three options. All right, so I've turned the competitive mode on to give us, again, that torque vectoring and more lenient stability control, and are kind of up to some corners here I always take. Let's see how this thing handles. So you also get quicker steering with the SS, which is appreciated. And this one also does have the summer tire package. It's only $395 to give you the tires. They're Continental Pro Contact 6 summer tires, which is a nice improvement over Michelin Primacy all seasons you'd usually have. You also get some more fade-resistant brake pads. And, you know, it's certainly nice to get summer tires for that just slight upcharge. And it handled really well back there. So, you know, the thing is, this vehicle is pretty good on a back road as long as, you know, the corners don't get too tight, because you do feel the weight of these eventually. You know, these weigh, I think, right around 5,700 pounds, which is a couple hundred pounds heavier, I think, than most of the other competitors. And again, kind of goes to the vibe of this vehicle of being more of a cruiser, you know, being more of just straight line performance. And, you know, I mean, again, it's a little better well-rounded than, you know, a regular Blazer with this much power, having the bigger brakes and the sportier tires. They're 275 wide tires all around, by the way. You know, so they definitely, you know, again, they tuned the suspension differently and all that. So there's some enhancements there, but clearly the focus was on, you know, this being more of a straight road kind of performer. And as a result, you know, it's just because, you know, you have a bigger battery pack. And I think they, again, chose the cruiser aspect of, we're going to give this thing a bunch of range, more range than the competition, which it does have. It's the best range out of all the performance electric crossovers in this segment. 303 miles of range total from a 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, to be exact. And so, you know, again, these are just choices they made. They decided to go differently. And I mean, I totally understand trying to appeal to a different niche of the market, and leaving the, you know, better handling for the IONIQ 5N, which I think certainly handles a lot better than this. Even EV6 GT, I think, is a more agile, smaller feeling, more eager to change direction and all that. And I think Mach-E GT even as well feels a little smaller, again, a little more tossable. And we're talking about very heavy EVs, so nothing that's going to be, you know, Lotus Elise, you know, agility, but still, you know, just better than this, I would say. But again, with this, you charge less because of the longer range. You have, you know, probably a little bit more comfort than many of those. And so it all just comes down to, again, what your, you know, personal preferences are and how you plan to actually use the vehicle. But we're going to try out a launch here very briefly. I have the wide open Watts mode still on. I think it's just left foot brake here, right foot on the gas. And there it goes. And that's it. And it launches you very quickly there. Very impressive. And yeah, certainly feels every bit of that claim 0 to 60 time. Really fun and very, very cool. Now, the one nice thing is the wide open Watts mode, you have it on for the entire key cycle if you want. It's on the whole time. Unlike a lot of other things, whenever they have their peak power numbers, that's for a limited amount of time. You know, this isn't. This, you can, the entire time you can drive around with the full power if you want, which is nice, because if you don't have the wide open Watts mode on, you lose 100 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. So you go down to 515 horsepower and 450 pound-feet of torque. And, you know, still going to be plenty of punch around town, and I think that's obviously done to try and give you, again, better efficiency, so you don't need to have, you know, all of that right on tap there, right under your foot. But if you want to, you can hop in here every day, hit that button, and, you know, have the full power the entire time if you'd like, which is, you know, a key differentiator from, you know, most of the others there, which is, you know, really cool. Now, the thing that I am missing is the thing that especially, you know, the IONIQ 5N was my car of the year last year. I absolutely loved that thing because, you know, it did paddle shifting, different sounds. You could change the torque split. There's drift modes. There's all kinds of fun toys and, you know, gimmicks to some people. But to me, that all immensely added to the fun. Having, you know, 8 individual simulated gear ratios and playing through all those, and feeling like I was actually behind the wheel of something that's insanely fast but gas powered. You know, and you didn't have to have that. You could turn all that stuff off and have it feel very similar to this if you wanted. But just giving people that option, I had a lot more fun, I would say, accelerating and, you know, playing around with the power in the IONIQ 5. And for 2025 here, the EV6 GT is also getting the same paddle shifters, the same simulated gears. So the Kia and the Hyundai both share that. Now, that's something that Ford unfortunately doesn't have either. So the Blazer's not alone with, you know, that exclusion. But, you know, I would have liked to see Chevy do a little more bravery as far as the creativity department. But anyway, we're going to try out this handling a little bit now, going uphill and really trying to, you know, test out how this thing drives. Okay, so it is really, okay, that's good. Because I will recall that whenever I actually rode passenger in a Blazer EV pursuit vehicle, the cop car, we in an autocross course for the Equinox EV launch. Actually, we rode in the Blazer, which is the pursuit vehicle, is based on the SS. And from the passenger seat, it certainly seemed like on an autocross course, this thing was understeering like crazy with just the power in the front just overwhelming the handling. And obviously I'm not on an autocross course here, but you know, pushing it with the wheel turn, they have said that they reduce some of that output in the front motor, put more to the back, and again, do the brake base thing and all that, and change the stability control and everything else to really try to, you know, make this turn in better. And I think I'm starting to feel right there, you know, where the tires were starting to howl a little bit and starting to protest. So I don't think that it's completely solved the understeer problem, but I think it certainly is pretty intelligent with the way that it does that. And not really a performance competitor, but another one that has 600 horsepower I just recently experienced was the Jeep Wagoneer S. And that did have that kind of a problem where you stomp on it mid-corner and it's going to spin the tires and really, you know, kind of understeer with that front motor just being so powerful and too powerful for its own good if you're trying to, again, cleanly carve up a back road. And so I think the competitive mode really is a nice improvement. I'm not sure if the police vehicles are going to get that or not, but it's really nice we have it here for the SS version because it is definitely, I think, makes a big difference as far as the handling goes. And so the other little brief things about the battery to cover here, you know, I did say how it's, you know, 102 kilowatt hour battery, but as far as how fast it charges, it does do 190 kilowatt DC fast charging, and they say that can give you up to 78 miles in 10 minutes, and that is better than the Mach-E GT, which only maxes out 150 kilowatts, but that is still a far cry from the Hyundai IONIQ 5 and the EV6, which I believe those are like 235 kilowatt for the peak charge rate, and those can do like a 10%, 80% charge in like 18 or 19 minutes. So, you know, that's going to be a little bit more impressive, I think, than this, but you know, with this, again, having the bigger battery pack, you're not going to have to stop as often with 303 miles of range here in these. And that is really nice to have because that's one thing, you know, IONIQ 5N compromised on. You have like 221 miles of range in that thing. And, you know, I mean, if you're not doing long distance driving, it doesn't matter anyway. But if you do want a road trip, you do want to just cruise for extended periods of time, you're going to be a little more limited in that Hyundai versus this being able to go, you know, a lot longer. So that is, you know, a real nice perk here of this. Again, just comes down to personal preference. Personally, I'd still rather drive the IONIQ 5N and deal with the, you know, lower range. But, you know, if you're someone who just, again, wants that punch, you want the straight line performance, you don't care about the other gimmicks, you don't care about handling as much, you know, I think this is definitely going to be good. And now out here on the highway in the Blazer EV SS, the other really nice thing as far as cruisers goes is this is the only one that has the SuperCruise system. Now, Ford does give you Blue Cruise with the Mach-E GT, which is also a hands-free system and is the, you know, good runner-up to this system, but nothing beats SuperCruise in the industry still. Hands down, easily the best hands-free system. Does the automatic lane changes, does the best kind of lane centering. It stays engaged longer than Blue Cruise in all of my experiences. It just is still the best system easily, and you know, everyone else is still trying to play catch up to GM with SuperCruise here. So this also, and I mean, Hyundai doesn't even offer it, Kia doesn't offer it, you know, for the IONIQ 5N or the EV6 GT. So this is so nice to have. And also another reason why you're going to want to make sure you're doing super cruising whenever you're just driving on the highway for long periods is that resting your hand down here at the like 6 to 7 o'clock position is actually kind of sharp, and actually it's kind of uncomfortable for my finger to be resting up against that bottom spoke on the steering wheel there. But I'm going to hover my hands here because we do have a big SUV or a big 18-wheeler next to us here, and as much as I trust SuperCruise, every once in a while I still get a little bit nervous about going hands-free next to intimidating vehicles, but it did that just fine. It does a really good job here. You know, SuperCruise is also very intelligent with lane positioning so that it moves over a little bit whenever there are large vehicles around you and vehicles passing you and all that. And yeah, I really love SuperCruise. It's still hands down my favorite way to drive on the highway because it's just so well done. Otherwise, again, because we're talking about a fully loaded Blazer EV, everything else is standard. There's not a single safety option. I believe SuperCruise eventually does become a subscription thing. It's not free for the life of the vehicle, but it is, you know, free here whenever you first get this. Okay, it's telling me to take control here for some reason. You know, it does disconnect sometimes, but usually it's pretty short-lived and will come back on pretty quickly. We'll see how long it takes this time. But yeah, so I mean, everything else is standard, you know, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, you know, forward collision assist, you know, all those types of things. Back to hands-free. So yeah, it does a really good job here. So anyway, but the last couple of things here to mention really are just the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing goes for these, this is the cheapest way to get 600 horsepower at all. I mean, it starts at $62,000 roughly for these, and again, does undercut basically everybody else. Now, if we are talking about stuff that has less than 600 horsepower, the Mach-E GT does come in less than this, and that's going to be the value proposition out of all of these, because that actually, with the performance package that you can get on that, does give you 700 pound-feet of torque and a same 0 to 60 time to this. That only has 480 horsepower, but again, because 0 to 60 is the same and you do get more torque, you know, to me, I'm kind of calling them even as far as performance goes. And so, you know, those can be had, you know, in the mid 50s, and even if you get, you know, one of the ones that's comparably equipped to this, you do still come in, you know, in the very low 60s, assuming you're paying MSRP, which most of these vehicles you're probably going to get incentives on, to be completely honest, so your deal will vary. I have to judge based off MSRP though, because I don't know what kind of deal you're going to get, what the dealers around you offer, and what the incentives are at the time you're watching this. So it's hard to say, but from MSRP, Mach-E starts a little cheaper, and they've been on the market longer, so you're probably going to get even more of an aggressive discount, you know, versus the Chevys that, you know, are a little bit fresher and newer here. But again, your experience is going to vary there. But, you know, Mach-E GT, full disclosure, we do own a regular Mach-E Premium. It's been a very nice vehicle for us. It does have wireless Apple CarPlay and the wireless Android Auto. And now for 2025, the Mach-E GT also does have a more powerful rear motor. So it does have a rear bias setup finally, so it doesn't feel like a hot hatch with front wheel drive like it did previously. So I do really like, you know, that idea. I've not driven the revised Mach-E GT to really truly say how it drives, but sounds promising, and the fact that, again, there's some savings there, and CarPlay, to me, are two things that are really, you know, strong contenders here for this. But still, my absolute favorite in this segment is the Hyundai IONIQ 5N. It was my favorite car to review last year. If I wanted something like this, hands down, I would go for that. Now, that is about $3,000 more expensive. That's $67,000 and change. Again, assuming you're paying MSRP. That $3,000 though, you do get technically more horsepower, 641 horsepower, a little bit less torque, but it's so much fun with the paddle shifting, the sounds, the handling being phenomenal. It feels a little smaller, a little more tossable. They did an actual electronic locking rear diff, which this doesn't have. It's all simulated in this. That has real performance hardware. It's just so dynamic. It's so amazing with the handling, and as someone who, you know, enjoys a nice comfy cruiser but also really appreciates handling, you know, the IONIQ 5N to me is the clear winner of fun to drive and most enjoyable in this segment. Now, you do have Alcantara, you don't have a moonroof available in that. It's a little bit more simpler, a little bit more hardcore with the interior. You still get, you know, heated and ventilated seats and other niceties like that, but, you know, and having like the boost buttons on the steering wheel, and there's just a lot of fun, excitement built in, a lot of creativity, a lot of risk-taking that Hyundai did with that vehicle that I think has paid off, because now it seems like that is the gold standard as far as how to make an EV fun as of, you know, 2025 here. So, you know, I think that's definitely the way to go. And the fact that, you know, Kia is going to be copying that here with the refreshed EV6 GT, that's going to also get the paddle shifters, also get the simulated gearing, and also get the extra bump in power. You know, it's going to make that one, that's about $65,000, so actually a little cheaper than the Hyundai, but it's not quite as aggressive with its setup, I believe, as far as the brakes and stuff. So a little bit different, but, you know, if you want to have kind of a happy medium, I think EV6 GT could kind of be that happy medium for, again, basically the same price here as this. So stiff competition for the Blazer EV SS. Obviously, you know, again, this is the best as far as range. I'd say this is the largest of the bunch, if that's something you're after. You know, so there are certain perks here to this for sure. But to me, you know, again, the lack of smartphone integration is maddening, and just, it's a deal breaker for me personally. Might not be for you, but even if you don't care about that, just know that, you know, the others do handle better, in my opinion, are, you know, a little bit more just dynamic and, you know, a little easier to manage on a back road with their smaller size, lighter weight, all those types of things. So for that reason, Blazer EV SS would not be my top pick in this segment, but certainly a very fun vehicle. I still always appreciate any performance variants of anything that anyone offers. It's great to see the SS badge return here and return with, again, impressive performance, especially in a straight line. And again, also coming in, again, being the cheapest thing with 600 horsepower, you know, at this price point. You know, just a lot of value. And again, only $5,000 more than a fully loaded regular Blazer EV. You know, it's a strong value for sure. And I think, again, if we had an option for sportier seats and, you know, maybe a little bit more performance hardware, I think it could actually, you know, be even more impressive. And if you want to go one step further and you have the extra money, there is the Lyriq V coming, which is going to, again, have the same basis, same power output actually as well, but does have the magnetic ride control, does have unique seats, and, you know, a few of those other things that this is lacking if that's something you're interested in. And the Lyriq actually still, even for the V version, is going to have Apple CarPlay because that was grandfathered in. So if you got the extra money and you do really like the GM platform, go for the Lyriq V that's coming here this year instead, and hopefully stay tuned for a review of that here on the channel in the future. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts on the Blazer EV SS. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Chevrolet for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.